This is Jay Unger.
And Molly Mason, and you're listening to Recess
with Spinelli.
You are tuned in to Recess with Spinelli here on WSPN, Skidmore College Radio, 91.1 FM, Hoxton FM, London, England, and the New York State Music Blog. And today we are here with the legendary folk Americana duo, Molly Mason and Jay Ungers. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
A pleasure. We're so glad you could make it to our show.
Now, currently, you're on the heart and soul of American roots music. Is there a specific thing you have in mind for this tour as opposed to some other shows that you do?
Well, we do our music is mostly fiddle based, but with songs and waltzes and fiddle tunes, and it's based in blues and swing as well as country, and influenced by Irish, Celtic, and klezmer music. So it's a lot of different folk roots mixed together, although we try to separate them, play them individually and differently.
So Americana music is made up of a lot of different cultures of music, or how would you define it?
It is, because if it wasn't made up of all different cultures, it would all be Native American music, wouldn't it? American music. Yes, it's got a little bit of everything that people brought with them when they came to this country over the decades and centuries. And
there are so many places where these traditions are living with fiddling. Like if we think of America as North America, there's the Cape Breton fiddle style that's very Scottish, Quebecois fiddling, which is French with a lot of Irish and Scottish influence. I mentioned Cajun, that's another type of French music that mixed with blues and other southern influences. There's Western swing, where the big band swing music mixed with cowboy fiddling. I can go on, but there are so many different kind of subcultures that feed each other and off each other and on each other. So.
That's true, and there's of course different ethnic groups in different parts of our country. You'll find different folks in the Northeast than in the Northwest or the Southwest. And if you take even the same popular old time fiddle tune and you hear somebody play it in Maine, it's going to sound way different than somebody playing it in Arizona. And you can recognize it as the same tune, but it's just got this different kind of style because of all the different ethnic groups that came to the country and spread out.
But we're using the word Americana differently than in the world of radio and ways of marketing music. We're just using it as a more generic term. The generic version, not the prescription version.
So Americana as relating to the Americas, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
So what would you say the Catskill region, the Ashokan region, if you will, gives towards Americana? What's that unique style in that region?
Well, I don't know that there was a specific style. We did know a couple of the elder fiddlers from there, and they played tunes that in a sense were, from our perspective, the way they might have been played in the late 19th century, early 20th century. Because these people who were old, in the past 10 years, learned from folks when they were kids who were born in the 19th century. So there are tunes that are very Anglo-American, very much English, Irish, Scottish influenced. But, there in the Catskills, cowboy music, country music, Irish music, klezmer music, all these things are there, and it creates its own little stew. And I sometimes call it Celto-klezmer music because of all that mixing. Yeah.
Actually, so you yourself, Jay, you're from the Bronx and you're Jewish, so I assume you have a little bit of a background in klezmer music. Has that found a way to seep into other traditional American music as well?
Yeah, I think there's no way around it. And, I write a lot of tunes. Molly and I put out a book called Catskill Mountain Waltzes and Airs. There's 62 of our tunes, and they're the slow ones. And I'm working on a book of about 120 of the reels and jigs and such. And, some of them sound very Anglo-American or Celtic American, and others sound klezmer or Sephardic even. Yeah, Eastern European.
So did you grow up with that music, or did you find another style of music when you were growing up?
To an extent. Both my parents were born in Europe. My father in Hungary. He sang Hungarian folk songs on long trips in the car. And my mom was from Macedonia. It was Turkey at the time. And so at weddings and bar mitzvahs, and the bands would always be playing music that you wouldn't hear on the radio. Let's put it that way. And it really captivated me. I was drawn to it in a big way. But neither of my parents played, but they both sang it.
And Molly, I understand that you grew up on a farm in Washington, right? So did music play a part in farm life at all?
Well, not so much in farm life, actually, when I was growing up, but I got very interested in guitar when I was about 12, and I have a younger brother who got very interested in fiddle, violin, actually fiddle. So we started going to groups and get-togethers and fiddle contests out there in Washington State, where it has its own style of old-time fiddle music that kind of you hear a little bit of a Canadian accent in that Washington State fiddling going on there. So that's where I got introduced into traditional fiddle music and really learned to love it.
And your dad played a little and plays a little, and your Uncle Reynold was quite a fiddler too.
I had an uncle who was a great fiddler, more of country music and pop music from the 40s, pop country type of music from the 40s, Western swing, Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, that kind of stuff. I really heard from my Uncle Reynold when I was growing up. But I just really got interested in backing up a fiddle with a guitar and, listening to things from all over the country and everywhere, loving it.
Now, to do justice to folk music, Americana, do you think that you have to have a grasp or a basic grasp on the history of the music and the people who originally played it and wrote it?
I think it helps. I mean, it does an amazing thing to understand a tune or a song, either one, by having a little background on it, where it comes from, what it means, if there's lyrics. There's a lot of old-time tunes that also have some lyrics that people will throw in, and hard to understand what they're talking about in the lyrics, And then when you learn, this word is some old kind of farm tool, and this is the name of the job where you do this with that tool, and you kind of learn what that song's about. It really does give you a whole other breadth of understanding how to sing it or play it.
Yeah, and I think today, when I'm trying to find a tune that I used to know or that I heard somebody play, I can go on the internet and find it, hear it immediately. And it's a great resource for music from the beginning of recordings. There's stuff from old 78s, even cylinder recordings, available on the internet, as well as stuff recorded yesterday. So it's a kind of a leveling thing. So people who come to this without the historic background, there's no context for all this stuff. And I'm not putting that down, but I'm saying that's an amazing thing. And I want to encourage those who love it to also try to find sources that help them contextualize one thing that led to another, how these different things connected to each other. I think it just helps your the depth of your expression to know more about it and how it got to be what it is today, and that you're part of history, really. If you're playing and writing stuff today, you're part of a living tradition that goes back hundreds of years, and we hope will keep going forward hundreds of years.
It kind of reminded me of one of the things that we recorded on our Harvest Home CD. We were looking for things about farming, music related to farming, and we put on this medley of 5 tunes, I think. 5 or 6 tunes, all with titles that have to do with farming. So if you can rattle off some of those, do you remember them?
Yeah, they were all from the 19th century and older. It was The Muckin' of Geordie's Barn. That's the most pungent title.
Right.
Then Corn Rigs.
Like, what's corn rigs? We had to kind of look that up and figure it out. What the heck is corn rigs?
Then there's Harvest Home, which was an annual celebration that's kind of forgotten today, but it was huge all over Europe and America in the early days. And then the next tune was Swinging on a Gate, Speed the Plow, and The Wind That Shakes the Barley. Yeah. So that's on our Harvest Home album, that medley.
And to me, even the titles of those tunes, give you some insight, some window into the life that the tunes came from and were popular in when you start thinking about it and realizing what the connection was. And I find out later that in the late 19th century and early 20th century, maybe, performance that was kind of preceded vaudeville, you know what I mean? Stage performance of music and humor and little skits and stuff. In England, there was a kind of a regular character at these little plays, performance plays, and that was the farmer. He was like a guy, and he always, wore farm clothes, and he always had a hat, and he always played the fiddle. So the fiddle has, for decades and for generations, has been really tied into farming and working with the land. Interesting.
For students and for people with so many different genres in today's world, how would you recommend folks get involved in Americana and folk music in maybe less of an academic sense and more of just a general interest sense? Are things like after school or after college, or is there just a general mindset they can take?
Well, there's a number of groups and folk clubs and things like that actually get together with a jam session once a week or once a month at least. I know in the city that there's a lot of that. The Pine Woods Folk Music Club, which now calls themselves something else, I was just told today. But look up the Pine Woods Folk Music Club because their old websites are still on the internet somewhere. And they do all kinds of things from playing old-time music on instruments to singing sea shanties, different groups, different days of the week, and, they get together at different times. But that's a good way. And you'll run into young people, and you'll run into some really old people who've been doing this for decades and decades already. And so it's an opportunity to really learn some great stuff.
Well, it reminds me to mention that we didn't talk about the social side of this music. We're here tonight to perform on a stage, but a large part of the music for us is jamming with friends, sitting around a kitchen table or after a meal, and just meeting at a weekly or monthly jam session. So there's this social aspect that's tremendously important, and that's part of what has kept the music alive. And you can tap into it maybe one way is to go to a festival and camp out, because in the campgrounds at bluegrass festivals, folk festivals, all these kinds of acoustic music festivals, that's where the real heart and soul of the stuff is.
The jamming,
the
is going
partying
on.
And the jamming and the informal getting together, and you meet people and make friends. It's a good
I
thing.
might also mention that you can check out our summer music camps, which I think Jay already mentioned, ashokan.org on the internet. And, we have different types of weeks doing different kinds of music. And I'm thinking first of Southern Week, which just is people sitting around jamming and playing old-time tunes on banjos, fiddles, guitars, basses, mandolins, hours and hours a day for a week.
Well, visit the website, and you can see all the different genres and different times of the year that these happen at Ashokan, ASHOKAN.org. We'll look for you there.
And before we head off, you guys go back on stage, is there anything else that you would like to add? Any final thoughts for our listeners and your fans?
One thing I like to say is if you start playing music or you're already playing music, keep having fun with it. Keep enjoying it. You can get serious about it, but make sure you're still enjoying and having fun.
Good point, Jay. I'll add to that.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for interviewing us.
You have been listening to Recess with Spinelli here on WSPN 91.1 FM, Skidmore College Radio, Hoxton FM, London, England, and the New York State Music Blog. And we've been speaking with Jay UNGAR and Molly Mason.